Namaste and greetings. I, Preksha Jalan, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today we are gathered here for the day 4 of the EPAYF Environmental Policy and Action Youth Fellowship. We welcome you all to this immersive journey into impactful environmental policy and action. The chair for the program is Ms. Bhargavi S. Rao Ji, independent researcher and educator, environment activist, Bangalore, and visiting senior fellow honorary at IMPRI. Our expert panel for the program today includes Mr. Ranjan Panda ji, Ms. Bhavreen Kandhari ji, and Professor Shyamala Mani ji. The conveners for this course are Dr. Mansi Bal Bhargava ji, Ms. Suhasini Iyer ji, Professor Utpal Kumar De ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, and Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. Proceeding further, we welcome everyone to this transformative journey and appreciate your dedication in investing your time, energy, and commitment to gaining a profound understanding of the crucial role and intricate details of environmental policy and action. We have also shared course outline and reading resources in your email for your kind perusal. Before we start today's session, I would like to state the housekeeping announcements. Please join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and please refrain from making general comments in the questions to save time. To begin today's session, I would like to invite our chair, Ms. Bhargavi S. Rao ji, independent researcher, educator, and environment activist, and visiting senior fellow at IMPRI, to give her opening remarks. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, Preksha, for the introduction. And thanks again to everybody at IMPRI for giving me this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here every week, listening to experts and chairing this session. It's been wonderful the last 3 weeks that we've had already covered a variety of topics and a variety of themes. And we had a special session on June 5th to mark the Environment Day. And today we are talking about rivers, air pollution, and waste management. All three issues that plague our cities today. Bangalore recently recovered from a major water shortage. So I'm really eagerly looking forward to what Mr. Ranjan Panda has to say, because rivers today are under such great pressure, not just from dam building, but also from urbanization and increasing industrialization. While we said no to big dams, the smaller dams, the so-called run-of-the-river schemes, are continuing to spoil our rivers and the ecology of our rivers. Are at stake. There are so many species of aquatic, life forms that are slowly disappearing, and we don't even know how much we are losing on a yearly basis. That also reminds me of a story of about a decade or so back, where we almost ran the Miss Kerala fish, which had reached the red list. So like that, I'm sure there are so many other aquatic species which have joined the red list today, and one would never know, because those kind of studies are greatly wanted in countries like ours. So looking forward to listening to Mr. Panda. And also, given the fact that electric power is today considered renewable energy, and how easy things have become to install hydroelectric power. I've particularly looked at the Kaveri issue here in Karnataka, and it is appalling how local communities down the downstream villages don't get enough water, while much of the water is diverted for hydroelectric power, and much of it comes to cities like Bangalore. Then yes, air pollution is something that's plaguing our cities today, and the increasing number of public health issues that we are continuing to see, particularly children. I am reminded of that brilliant study done by, it was covered in New York, but done by a team of people. Two of them were actually from Bangalore who also joined the study, of how they followed two children in Delhi, one coming from an affluent family and one coming from a low income family, to see how their day goes through the day and the kind of pollution they are exposed to through the day from air pollution particularly. And that story was an eye-opener. And it is people like Bhavreen who've been contributing so much to it, who've been raising their voices, and it is because of such voices that today air pollution is a big topic in all the cities. And whatever little action is being done is because of these voices, and I'm eagerly looking forward to hearing her. And it's a pleasure to reconnect with Shyamala after so many years. And she's been working on the issue of waste, and also particularly in the context of raising awareness. And I think today, if at all, even if 30 or 40% of the cities are segregating waste, it is because of these efforts over the last so many decades. And it will be wonderful to listen to her to understand what the current challenges are, and where are we headed in the context of waste management. So without wasting any time, over to our speakers. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your comments. So, for the first session today, I would like to invite Mr. Ranjan Pandaji, Convener Water Initiatives Orissa. Sir will be guiding us on the topic of rivers, communities, ecology, and environment. We welcome you, sir. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks, IMPRI, for inviting me to this. It's also good to reconnect with Bhargavi ji and other friends. I'm not sure of the audience, like the young people. And right now, I'm invested a bit more in promoting a campaign called Youth for Water. And I think I'll start my. I normally don't use presentations, so I beg apologies if participants are more tuned to PowerPoint presentations. I'm normally a person who wants to flow freely like rivers, and I don't want to get obstructed by pointers and all. There are certain times when definitely presentations are very important, but for this kind of a topic, which is very interesting, I think uh, the the interlinkages between our rivers, communities, and the ecosystems. I think it is important that I speak more and guide direct you to any uh, sort of presentations less. So I'll start this with just one disclaimer that like I feel for some reasons that I will talk, our rivers are actually losing the perception battle among the members of human societies. So that's a concern that brings me to uh, the formation of Youth for Water campaign that was actually started after a year-long study of forest management uh, initiatives in mostly tribal and indigenous areas of Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand. So in about in 2017-18, uh, because I'm involved with these issues for more than I think 33 years now. But then something that struck us uh, during this period of time when we were actually doing a study of how local forest conservation initiatives are actually linked to water water security. So normally what happens, we are confined to very technical terms when it comes to water security, sustainable development goals, even climate change. So society per se, and to me, is getting into too much of technicalities, which is good. But then there is other dimension, and society itself is that dimension. So I'm basically a sociologist. So whenever I see rivers, whenever I see nature, I basically see from socio-anthropological perspectives. Then a hydrologist or hydrogeologist or an engineer would see a river. So in that particular research, we definitely found very substantial testimonial evidences from villages in these states. We basically preferred we basically you know went to villages which were sort of there were certain criteria we selected, and we went to these villages, uh, you know discussing how they have been involved in forest protection. And we found out that the more indigenous the communities are, the better are the forest conservation and management systems. Unlike the majoritarian view that forest departments, forest officers, they manage the forest well. If you really go into the indigenous communities, if you go into their their villages, their sort of efforts, you will find that they conserve it because they consider forests uh, as their ancestors, as their family members, as their gods, and everything, because that is where a relationship actually counts. So I will come to the perception battle that I started with. So they have a relationship. They manage the resources because they are quite convinced that these are their family members, these have been their ancestors. These resources have actually protected them against several kind of disasters, including uh, you know drought episodes. And so so a lot of things that we discovered, like it's not a discovery anymore because we already had ideas of how forests are being conserved. But one thing that struck our minds is definitely, and all these protection efforts have actually rejuvenated the local water sources. And we basically looked into from four lenses of water security during the study. The four lenses of understanding water security to me are, for example, availability of water, uh, access to it, that's like equitable access. Then, uh, the kind of stability you have in water management. And then you have, your, yeah, the third one is equity, and the fourth one is stability. So in case of water security, so when you look into that, you find that locally forest protection have efforts have actually rejuvenated water resources, and they basically meet all of these indicators of water security. But then stability is something that we thought uh, was very important, because even in those communities which have been traditionally dependent on local natural resources for their survival, their progress, and for their socio-cultural identity, and practices, the younger generation is slowly, sort of not getting disinterested in the protection efforts. And that is what we sort of observed in one after the another. Almost every village we went, there were exceptions where the youth actually are taking a more interest in conservation of resources than the elder generation, but these are rare incidents. That is one thing that struck us. So we organized the Odisha River Conference And the next Odisha River Conference was held near Simlipal Bioreserve in Baripada district of Odisha. And there we wanted to discuss this with the indigenous communities, with the youth, with other stakeholders like experts and civil society and all. This is one. The other stream from which the idea of the Youth for Water campaign came was our regular observation on why, during our interaction with youth from the cities. And I have, I have been blessed that I am invited to several schools, colleges, universities regularly to interact with the youth, talk to them. So there is an informal survey we keep on carrying for years. And one thing that we found, like very recently, I'll give you an example. We were doing a drawing competition among children. Children starting from school children to the younger generation in higher education, like just after the matriculation level. And I asked during the World Wetlands Day, I asked the children, I asked the youth, where from the water comes, where from our water comes. So and that's in a city in Odisha. So only two of them out of the 50, they actually mentioned about rivers, and three of them mentioned about the water bodies, the surface water bodies like ponds, tanks, wells. The rest 26, actually they talked about taps and bottles, and the rest of them had no idea, what to say. And this is actually getting precarious by the year, I must tell you. So in 2017-18, even before that, we kept on doing this informal survey. We keep on asking the youth, the younger generations, the children, and slowly, uh, the visibility of rivers in our perception is actually going down. So that is another stream of observation, of realization, that from that the study that I said, the river water nexus, and the youth's sort of changing understanding of our water bodies, both of them sort of prompted us to start this Youth for Water campaign. So I I just stopped that at that, but then over the period of time, for all of us, if we really start thinking about rivers, because uh, what normally comes to our mind, you know, as whenever we think about rivers, what normally comes to our mind, and we have discussed this with different types of communities, different ages of people. We have worked with communities in river areas. I myself sort of a son of river Mahanadi. I have jumped into the river. I have swum, in the river for years and years together, without any apprehensions, without any, fear. But then, uh, but then, when I was a child, when I was a youngster, right now I cannot, dare to touch Mahanadi water at several places. But for me, for example, uh, river is uh, river is what? River is life, or river is, uh, you know, the uh, the mother of the civilization. I mean, and many things. But then, whenever I go, or all of you, whenever you go, I don't know what exactly do you think about a river, and you know, what kind of a picture you get out of a river. If you ask a poet, for example, if you ask a writer, if you ask a painter, they will all have different views of a river. But then in general, in a mass scale, in large numbers, what do people think about rivers at the moment is very, very dangerous. Is very, very I would say painful, because many people, and mostly in the cities, have started to see rivers as a just a water body, just a water that is going. There is a flow. There are two banks of a river, and somewhere it's a stony bed, somewhere it's a sandy bed, somewhere it's like very polluted, somewhere it is less polluted. But what exactly does it mean? Being polluted, being not polluted, looking clean, not looking clean, and whether a river is a single identity, a single entity, or it's a connected common. Is it connected to the land? Is it connected to the forest? Is it connected to the cities? Is it connected to anything else? The air, the atmosphere. That is something in basic science. I think it was taught. It is still being taught. But as we grow off, as the younger generation, uh, you know, uh, there is a uh, now a talk everywhere that it's a growing dividend, being young, being a young country. But is it really a dividend, uh, you know, to have more young people who have seen the river as a polluted water body? Like, ask me, and I have seen the river, for example, for almost 50 years now. And for me, I have seen different phases of uh, a river. But then for the younger generation, for example, the person who is 20 years, 18 years, 25 years, has he or she seen a river which is clean? Or he has actually dreamt of a river uh, that is clean in somewhere in Himachal, or somewhere in the Himalayas, or somewhere else. So I think this is how one should start understanding rivers. In my in in my words, in my understanding, rivers are not the same everywhere, not the same for everybody. Not They have intergenerational perceptions, perception changes. They have spatial uh, perception changes. So we, in the recent river conference, for example, we did discuss about a topic called urban rivers, rural rivers. While there is nothing called an urban river or rural river in the river's parlance, but perception wise, uh, a city dweller has started to look river in a completely different sense, and a villager will look river into a completely different sense. But then it's a policy training. How does the policy making actually consider the river? And do we still have an understanding that rivers are not civil engineering topics only? Like, if you ask uh, a, a mantri or a babu, the IS officers, or even other departmental people in the government, how do they look at the river? Have they ever thought, or you just try this out? Why I'm asking all this in question mode is, you know, this is a quest that we should actually uh, start with going out of this session. It's not about just having an understanding of river, its ecology, its relationship with society, and then going with a certificate or something. It's about a daily lived concept. Rivers are not something separate from us. They might be they might be actually holding a very less amount of water than the groundwater or than the other surface water bodies. But then they look like that they're just flowing in between two lines from this place to that place for this much of a kilometer. But they are actually part of a larger ecosystem. They are part of an entire river basin. There are watersheds in the forest which feed the river. And there are rivers in the cities which have now been termed as sewer lines, been converted into sewer lines. So they have lost the identity of being a river. Most of the cities. In one seminar, I argued that cities should be considered as waterscapes because many rivers crisscross cities, but we don't consider them as rivers. We have another perception of rivers that I had also written some time back, that rivers are basically curses on us when they flood. Like Bhargavi was talking about, uh, Bengaluru. What happened in Bengaluru is, you know, uh, lakes have been destroyed and extreme precipitation has become the norm in during climate change, under climate change scenarios. But then, you know, on a particular date when you you find the monsoon, 40%, 50% of the entire year's quota of rainfall falling on a single geography, and you have no rivers, rivulets, water bodies left, then you are basically uh, you basically made your city something like a flooded, landscape, which is uh, which forces your sort of the IT sector uh, professionals traveling on tractors, never seen before, all their BMW and other cars, all the costly cars for which they have aspired, along with the aspiration of staying in cities like Bengaluru, basically going redundant. Nobody is going to, buy them anymore because their cost has gone down to almost zero, and they're all gone. The machines have been seized by being underwater for so long, and they're going back to the tractors to actually commute. But for 2 days, 3 days, the girl died, I think, inside a car in Bengaluru, and because of this kind of flooding. So that is the river actually. If you start understanding the river, then that exactly is the river, and that's why we have started cursing rivers, and we have started in the cities actually blaming that cities are being flooded. No, actually, cities are not being flooded. Cities have taken over the rivers, their space, the water bodies, which are also linked to the river ecosystems. So once we start understanding rivers in their persona, in their real natural, ecological, hydrogeological persona, then we will start to understand that they have an interaction and daily to daily interface and interaction with a society that respects or disrespects, abuses or protects the river. So it's like it's our task as human beings to start understanding rivers in their entirety. As I keep on saying, it's not the two lines for few kilometers that a river flows, and it's not one the funniest and the fanciest concept called development, for example, is the society's masterpiece. The society that we live at the moment, we feel that development is something uh, actually is something that is progress. gross domestic product based economy is something that we are aspiring. Cities, the growing grayscape is something that is fulfilling our aspirations. No, and that's the reason we don't understand even the heat wave currently that we are still on. Uh, you know, researchers have already confirmed that the development in cities actually are responsible more than twice. Climate change is responsible for the heat, the urban heat island, and effect and all that is we are suffering at the moment. Excuse me. Anybody wants to say something?
No, sir, please continue.
Hello. Yeah. So I think you can point me if my time is over, so that I don't know exactly uh, when to finish, but then I can always keep on going, and as long as it is not boring for the participants. So I think rivers are interlinked. Climate change that we are talking about at the moment, for example, the other perception battle is about where is the problem. So uh, ask a boy or a girl in Bhubaneswar, and they're very much comfortable talking about Bengaluru problem. They're very much comfortable about talking about Chennai or Cape Town day zero problem. But then ask them, where is the nearest water body? They haven't seen. They don't know the plight of the tank or the pond that is just in their own backyard. So that, and they also don't know that these are also interlinked ecosystems. So uh, rivers have also lost that perception battle very fast. People don't now. One thing that I told you, first is rivers are the lines. Second is rivers are the construction, the engineers domain. Third is rivers are singular identities. They don't belong to anywhere else. And fourth is rivers are confined to the water service they are giving to humans. As long as I see water in a river, I think that the river is healthy. There is water. I curse it when it floods, but I don't understand that there was something called a floodplain in most of the rivers, because our obsession is now to develop river fronts, embankments, roads. Several cities are building these entertainment zones around rivers. I think absolutely difficult to comment on these, because uh, that's how development is being seen, even at at the policy level, at the society level. So right now, I was there in Guwahati, for example, and the riverfront is now being expanded. So a lot of new developments are going on. Forests are being chopped off. So there could be this is happening everywhere. So that is another issue, that a river is not only the flow of water. It also has something called a floodplain area. And if you guys keep a tab of developments that happen around rivers by any means, then you must have heard about the great Supreme Court case or NGT case against uh, one of the spiritual gurus in India, who had actually held a huge spiritual mela on Yamuna River floodplains. So That is a time when suddenly floodplains came into debate. But after that, uh, nobody debates floodplains anymore. Nobody thinks that rivers have, actually they don't. During the monsoon, for example, most of our rivers are rain-fed. That we were in a tropical uh, uh, climate, system, and most of the rivers are basically rain-fed. All the peninsular rivers are, they start from forest or mountains and they end up in the bay, uh, in the oceans. But then the Himalayan rivers are only, for example, glacial uh, fed rivers, and they're having another, other kind of challenges. Their ecology is not being understood completely in any policy. That's the reason you see a lot of these, challenges in Himalayan areas. They're in fact one of the most critical ecosystems in danger in the entire world. That's the ACR's water tower is actually in danger at the moment, and our rivers are linked to that system only, and their ecosystem is facing huge challenge. A lot of development work is happening, and we call this development as our progress. But then, what is happening is we are starting to lose in our minds, in our science, in our scientific understanding of rivers, in our ecological sort of domain of knowledge on rivers. We are starting to lose the way rivers have actually been traditionally looked even by our own spiritual and religious texts. We have started to lose the respect that we actually were supposed to give to our rivers. So rivers were revered, they were respected without glorifying. Of course, there were several practices which are not healthy for rivers in our own tradition, but there were at least texts in Vedas, in other uh, epics, that rivers were actually revered, and they were not revered just as a water giver, a service provider, but they were revered as in identities by themselves, in entities that were almost considered as gods, or even if we relate God to the existence of humanity, humans, then to humans. So I think it's a great fall. It's a painful fall that rivers are losing a perception battle. They are being just they are completely getting erased from the youngsters' mind. It is only when a picnic party is arranged, it is only when you have to go for a DJ night near a river, uh, in a riverfront, or in some forested rivers, you go to do some adventurous games or sports, playing that, uh, attracted by some ecotourism and other companies, that you go to the side of a river without understanding that actually you are going because your mental health is sort of getting a boost. Your physical health is getting a boost because of the river, because of the ecosystem that is linked to the river, because of the trees that are growing near the river, or that exist near the rivers. And then you are also having another very intricate relationship with rivers for ages, that is the fish. You have been a beneficiary of you know the fish diversity that rivers provide you. You have been a beneficiary of the nutrition you find from the fish varieties at different places at different times. And one thing that rivers are actually fighting, for example, at the moment, are is actually a sort of uh, highly eroding fish diversity in most of the rivers throughout the world, not only in India, but everywhere. And one of the reasons is the dams. Actually, in one of my writings, I had written the dams are the new rivers, because once you build a dam, and which I think we have somewhere around 60,000 large dams at the moment all across the world, and they serve a pocket of people around them, and their reservoirs are basically built on areas in most of the tropical areas by destroying the tropical forests, and they have been methane culprits and all. They have destroyed several other things. They have definitely provided a lot of benefits to pockets of people. I don't deny that. And they have basically also provided water security to certain areas, but their impact on biodiversity, their impact on the related rivers and related ecosystems is a very, very less studied and discussed area. And I think whenever we want to talk about rivers, their ecologies, their connection with the society, I think we must talk about the dams. Dams definitely look like an sort of an indispensable instrument in our uh, journey in progress as human societies. That is how they have been marketed. But then, have we, as a society, we should also ask ourselves: have we, as a society, the most important species on Earth, for example, because it has been given a brain, the most you know the species which has been blessed with a brain, basically to me, in my understanding, to sort of give space for all others to survive in harmony. Can we not evolve our education, our engineering, our understanding around rivers, around water, to a level that we can actually manage the rivers without large dams that threaten the freshwater biodiversity? So, biodiversity, for example, that is not only required for the rivers to stay alive, but also for millions of people dependent on it for their livelihoods and other benefits. So there is another dimension to river I want to bring here is rivers are different for the rich and different for the poor. So there is still a huge amount of huge number of people who are poor and who are directly dependent on rivers and the related ecosystems for their daily lives, not only for bathing, but also for the nutrition, I said, and also for, like, there could be several fisher folks, there could be several other kind of, livelihoods. So even if as humans we do not want to understand the language of the rivers, as rivers, if we start understanding the language of rivers and their biodiversity as people, as people who are directly dependent on them. Like I told about people who go to river for their parties, for their picnics, for their enjoyment. But there are millions of people who live with rivers, who live around the rivers, who are still dependent on the rivers and the related ecologies. Like if you start looking into the river beds, for example, because tropical rivers dry off, it's very normal. Like the dams dry them off, accelerate the drying process. That's abnormal. That is man-made, human-made. But then naturally the rivers dry off, and when they dry up also the river beds are used for several things. There are certain bird species which would actually lay their eggs in the floodplains in those river beds during that particular time. There are several poor people who would be actually, if you just go around and look at the rivers anywhere, start looking the rivers in these through these lenses, just not as two lines, a water flow between two lines, or just not as riverfront beautification. but start looking rivers from these several ways of dependence, of relationship that people have. There are a lot of vegetables grown inside the river beds. I'm not coming to the sand mining and other things. That's another huge topic, and that can be debated and discussed in another class sometime. But then
Excuse me, sir.
look at the sand. Yeah,
Excuse me, sir. Sorry to interrupt. We're nearing the session time, so if you
yeah.
could wrap up, since we would
I
want to do
will.
the
I will.
Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So basically, dams fragment uh, the passage of freshwater species, and rivers still give a lot of other benefits, and many of the poor people survive of the rivers. Similarly, many of the other species, they survive. There are also areas called riparian buffer zones in rivers. There are very special areas where several specific kind of water bodies are seen in alongside rivers in many places, and rivers have other kind of ecosystems that they boast of, that they actually support as they start you know nearing the sea. The mangrove areas that you see, they are basically they basically come off in the intersection point between the rivers and the sea. So they are an ecosystem in themselves. So you have all these things that want to that you want to understand. If you want to understand the rivers and understand the rivers from their biological perspectives, from their societal perspective, the socio-cultural relationships we have with rivers, try to understand them. And the last point that I wanted to say, and that is also related to dams and the way we are treating our rivers, is many rivers are now failing to reach to the sea, or the number of days they can actually reach to the sea has also shrunk, and that is also creating other kind of ecological and uh, climate change related problems, because if the freshwater load that the sea is ought to receive from our rivers goes down over a period of time, then the sea's ability to you know absorb the heat will also go down, and then that will create more problems. So I think these are some of the very sort of uh, larger areas of uh, issues, and you know uh, that I wanted to flag off today in this session, and I'm open to questions, and we can discuss further if we have a time for question answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to invite Bhargavi ma'am for her remarks, and in the meantime, participants can enter their questions in the Q&A box, or please raise your hands after the remarks are concluded. Thank you. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Preksha, and thank you, Mr. Panda, for that wonderful presentation on what's happening to our rivers and where we are and what are the kind of efforts that are required right now. I simply am amazed at that one example that you shared about. You ask anybody today, particularly students, where your water comes from, they will say tap, or you ask where your food comes from, and they'll say supermarket. That has become the norm. So we've lost our connection with our water bodies, and given that in urban areas all the wells are closed, and the lakes and ponds are also slowly disappearing, we've reached a stage where that connection with our natural sources of water has become completely erased, and that is where a lot of awareness is needed. And as you were talking, I was also reminded of the personhood that Ganga and Yamuna have received, and there is this growing body of work that is now coming up on earth-centric law or the ecocentric law, which is looking at things from the perspective of nature itself. So if these rivers were to argue in a court of law for their survival, what would their arguments be? I think that is where we all need to focus our attention and put our minds and take a lot of the learnings from what you have just shared. And there is this need for a growing consciousness in that context, if at all we need to protect our rivers, because it is the rivers that sustain all of us. With the rivers gone, civilizations have perished in the past, and slowly we are also headed there. So thank you so much for that. And I think there are questions coming up. Over to you, Preksha. I won't take away the participants' time.
Thank you so much for your comments, ma'am. Yes, Nishchint, you can go ahead with the question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful session. And my question to you is regarding Ganga Yamuna River ecosystem in Prayagraj, which is very rich in its biodiversity. Like it provides home for various species of dolphins, alligators, and Siberian cranes migrating from Siberia during Kumbh Mela. Also, it provides the floodplain provides for cultivation, agriculture, and things like that. Another social factor involving in this floodplain is about the Kumbh Mela or Magh Mela that happens annually, and how these factors are acting together on the floodplain, and how can we mitigate the human interaction to maintain the Ganga Yamuna river ecosystem health. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a very important question. Actually, if you see any any stretch of a river, we have these cross sectional interactions happening in some parts, because we have these larger traditional ways of living. The religious uh, things are also there. The religious practices are very prominent, and Ganges especially, because is the most talked about river. So there are definitely some spaces, and of course some spaces are also ecologically more sensitive because of the, as you said very rightly, uh, of the uh, of the migratory birds and other species coming. So I think that exactly is what I want to say. Is rivers are not a simple phenomenon to look at. They have sustained these complex and interrelated aspects of relationships for ages. It's not that today only. Of course, the sort of uh, the volume of things might have gone off. The kind of uh, policies are at a different level. But then traditionally, there are pockets where you have this kind of complicated things to look like. Even if you come to Odisha, for example, in Cuttack at the coast, you have this sand festival happening in a floodplain, and there are many floodplains in India where they have now encroached to make this. They have started to replicate these uh, riverfront development models that started from Sabarmati and all, and kind of new areas of these complex interactions are growing. So I can only say that there has to be a learning uh, from these, I would say, the hotspots of the complex relationships that rivers actually facilitate. So how to manage where many kind of stakeholders, both human and and ecology stakeholders are having a relationship together, managing a relationship together, and then take it forward to your further development processes at I think at no cost we should give way to human interaction, interference more in areas where actually ecology is surviving, or in a very difficult stage of its survival. So I think our planners should look into that, and lessons should be taken from these kind of areas. I think that's what I can say now, if I understood your question correctly.
Thank you, sir, for your answer. So there's another question, I believe. Dr. Urba, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Okay, hi, I'm Dr. Urba Malik. I'm a faculty member at the university in Kashmir. So I was just thinking that are there ways to better? First of all, I really appreciate your presentation, very enlightening and encouraging vis-a-vis the discussions that are relevant to environment. I was thinking, like, what are the ways through which we can improve or better the urban planning and infrastructure so that it helps in managing the pollution of the rivers? That's one. And second, it's not a question, just maybe discussing with you that how can we involve the community, how vis-a-vis community engagement, so that in urban spaces, so that it helps us in bettering the condition of the rivers. That's all. Thank you.
I think very important questions, and both are interrelated. Uh, the second question actually has a hint to your first question, because the problem is urban planning. I think Bhargavi and others will also agree, is they are becoming alienated systems. Communities are not there. Cities forget the people while they plan, and that's the reason a lot of these city plannings are actually not at all uh, people friendly or ecology friendly. So I think we should start relooking at there are certain initiatives definitely being taken off in Indian cities at the moment. I know some of them. I'm part of some of them, and where the traditional knowledge systems are being integrated, or at least they are being trying to integrate it, so people have the knowledge of a lot of things. And but then people have also sort of, as I said, lost that knowledge somewhere, because they have not been consulted. Their knowledge has not been respected. And many people, let us not forget, in Indian cities are actually people who have actually uh, migrated out from the villages, where they had better experience of living with nature. So I have been making this case everywhere, that don't let us tap that knowledge. People migrate because of several factors, fine, they have aspirations or they have other factors to migrate. When they come to the cities, they don't have any outlet where they can actually utilize the knowledge that traditionally they had gained. uh, Now the cities, because at least in the name of nature based solutions and other that is coming up in the climate change battle era, I think cities have the opportunity to again go back to the people and change their urban planning approach completely, or drastically at least. And they should start uh, integrating people's knowledge, and of course everybody else's all sectoral knowledge into this planning process. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answers, sir. Moving forward, we look forward to learning from you in further IMPRI events as well. Thank you so much for taking out your time and delivering such an enlightening session today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting. So, and I have to move actually. I'm sorry, I cannot stay. So, thanks again.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to our next session, I am honored to invite Ms. Bhavreen Kandhari ji, founder Warrior Moms. Ma'am will be guiding us through the topic of air pollution and intergenerational equity. We welcome you, ma'am. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's such a pleasure, and I'm very grateful to Impact and Policy Research Institute for organizing such fantastic sessions. In the past also, I've been fortunate to attend a few, and it's extremely helpful. I will also introduce, Bhavreen Khanna. We actually work together on many, I mean, because considering we're talking of citizen movements and intergenerational equity, I thought it'll be nice to just give my, those a few minutes to, elaborate more on when we get to the, the part of the quiz, etc. And I'm so sorry that we actually planned a little, app kind of a thing to do a lot of activity, but there's been a glitch and I'm so helpless. So I will just be using a very quickly last minute made PPT because it just helps for all of us to kind of relate to what we're speaking about. So of course, as you see, I'm speaking on the role of citizen movements in addressing air pollution and intergenerational equity. So this is something that most of us, see, and we know, especially the youth today is very, very aware. And to me, the maximum amount of hope and aspiration I see is with the youth. And but this comes, it's a responsibility, it's an idea that the current generations, like all of yourselves or my children or the younger kids, the youth, we have to kind of have a responsibility to protect the environment for all of you. And it's based on this idea that all generations are a part of a partnership, and it also brings us all, right to which our children and all of you or the youth inherits, and to use the same natural and cultural resources as the generations, as the previous generations or ourselves have been doing. So right now, like my co-panelist before this, he was talking about the rivers. I mean, we've seen clean rivers. We have seen clean water. I've lived mostly in Delhi, and we had water like this, drinking water, from the taps directly. But unfortunately, we've not given you that. Similarly, the air. So just to we'll just move to the next slide, please. So this is like what I'm saying. This is the situation. This is what it is. This is the heat waves. Delhi was hot, or many cities were hot, but they were not like this. We are burning. We've been watching it now. Heat waves have been consecutively for the third year, which is quite shocking, and everybody's been talking about it. But this is what we've forwarded, and probably 10 years from now, if we don't work on this. When I say we, please, I just want to say we means our authorities, governments. I mean them. Very less stake in this to actually participate. We can do in our own capacity whatever we can, but it's wrong to take that onus on ourselves. So if they don't take the right decisions in this thing, then probably 10 years from now on, and all of you telling your children that, yeah, 2024 was probably the best year. So I hope, that's going to change for everyone, because we are at least talking about this. We're trying to do things. So so intergenerational equity also deals with precisely the problem, which is the relationship, like I said, between generations, and it then establishes a framework that ensures that justice is maintained between them. So for now, we know that climate change is a term that we all use, and that's the issue of universal concern. And it's arguable, we can just kind of even think that it's the most serious challenge now the whole world is facing. So because like I said, I was introduced as warrior moms, as mothers, as concerned parents. I think it's the children who are, we kind of project them as they're the biggest stakeholders, and they will actually pay the maximum price for this. So it's the unborn generations, the children who are born, the youth, and who are going to actually bear the brunt of all these impacts. So as you see, we can move to the next slide, please. It's how the citizen movements. So of course, there are some pictures that all of you have obviously seen. It's the Chipko movement, the Bishnoi movement. It's not like the movements are happening now. It's for years old, and we've seen through it. But I can tell you that in the last say decade, there has been a big change. There is a big sense of a citizen movement. There's a presence. probably we have come to that situation that that there's a desperate move to bring movements in. And for me, being, in the last 2 decades was, of course, on clean air, and something that was absolutely in denial, something that was not being spoken of. So it meant that many 25 years ago, I could call myself also young. So we were desperate to kind of go to the ministry, speak to them, give petitions, but in a very, very small and very, very not a significant way. And this was growing slowly until, of course, 2016, when one day there was an apocalypse in Delhi. Everyone got up in the morning, and it was absolutely, there was a huge smog, like a, you couldn't see, you came out, you couldn't breathe. It was so bad. I don't think even I've seen something like that even now. It was a very bad day. And the first time schools were shut down. And that is the day that some, citizens, called together and a protest at Jantar Mantar, where parents came in to protest because the children were choking and all this. So the first time this a citizen movement was coming on the ground, which was talking about air pollution. So this started, and it was called My Right to Breathe, and how there were pictures over here. Then obviously this grew. So this was we were highly criticized by that time, calling us a very elite movement, which to some extent was, because they had pictures of the SUVs. People were coming in the SUVs and talking of air pollution and things like that. So it was important, as I said, we were citizens. Mostly everybody was citizens there. So it was the learning movement, that the movement has to be inclusive. So it will have to be, the masses will have to come in, and that is the day that this movement started growing. And then besides all the elites, the doctors, scientists, obviously you need them, because we are not experts. We were only citizens. Our information would never be credible if we were trying to speak on air pollution. So we were joining hands with all the experts. But besides them, then the stakeholders, the biggest stakeholders started coming, which is the waste collectors, which were the construction workers, the daily wage workers, the various strata of people who have to actually be. And so that was I think the time, the year 2017 it started. We started talking about that air pollution was an equity issue. So that was being highlighted, and it was a health issue, not an environmental issue. Now, at the same time, around 2017, 16 and 17, there was a huge hue and cry that began, because they were cutting 16,500 trees. I'm sure many of you also or you knew about it in Sarojini Nagar for the the government residential projects. So because this movement was already there, and then there were very many common people who were already very affected with air pollution, that there was an amazing aura, a strength of citizens that came in again. And this time they were actually as far as direct action was concerned of protesting, they were actually sitting for almost 1.5 months in that, and under that huge hoarding in Netaji Nagar, under the NBCC hoarding, and every day there was a protest at 5 o'clock. So that started bringing the connect, that everyone started connecting. It was called, it had many names, many citizens were there, but we've of course picked up from them as the Delhi Trees SOS, that some fantastic citizens joined hands. And so now there was a direct action, there was a legal case that started from there, because you're meeting every day, and now kind of finding ways that you need a tree felling, tree cutting moratorium, so that no tree felling should be allowed till the time the court takes it. So that was a big win at that point of time, and of course the advocacy. And then there were these wonderful experts, people, citizens who were, there was Padmavati and even Varahan here. And there were many people who were started tree walks and, started recording. A tree census was done, before we knew that the authorities will come in and start felling the trees. So a tree census was being done. So citizens were learning how to do a tree census, how to, let's say, measure a girth of tree and everything was coming into records. So this is the most beautiful part, that how organically, these citizen movements grow. And now, like I said, I'm just naming two, but there are many, many more. They start joining hands. So the ones who are passionate about trees are now also speaking about air, and the air is also speaking about trees because they are connected. So, and at the same time, say the waste worker community has come in. So the waste becomes a very important part, and the ones who are interested will start forming their, whole a movement going forward into the waste management, which comes later. So if I start, speaking about everything, then there'll be no end. All these pictures are actually genuinely from, their own, where everybody's been involved. I mean, I see a lot of children, even at Sarojini Nagar, the children climbed the trees because the JCBs were coming to cull them. And the children were there. It was a temperature like this, about more than 45 degrees. And they were on the trees so that they were not able to cut the trees until we came back from the courts and things like that. And then Fridays for Future, I'm looking. This was a again, many of you will know, you've been a part of it, I'm sure, and how all over India students were coming together, on Greta Thunberg's movement. And again, there was a lot of conversation. It's not only coming for the global strike or protesting. It was about forming groups, advocacy, understanding. The kids were learning, the youth were learning, the adults were learning. All the failures, over the years were kind of being highlighted. So it was, again, a very heartening, moment. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yes, ma'am. Could you give just a couple of seconds? I think we had some technical fault.
Yeah, no worries, please.
Yes.
I can still talk, yeah. There's no problem. So, so this was, of course, the movements, and something that, it's so funny that I was just preparing and we had this app, thing that didn't work out, glitch. And one of my, a global mom from Nepal, she wrote this to me because she was doing some native tree plantation, and she wrote, everything I do based on the belief that this earth is borrowed from our future generations, and that's why we need to protect it. So it was such a coincidence, but yes, that's the way, and that's what we encourage everyone to think like that, that yes, anything that I'm doing and we are doing, and it's going to cost our children, our future generation, something is not. So it's already costing our children, costing 12 years of their life because of the air pollution. I mean, I could have shown like a million, data, facts. That's all over the Google. Everything is there, so it's not. So I just put some together here, which is, you read every day. Everybody knows it, but that's really not good enough, because the ones who have to take action will have to actually work on this. And so, as you see, for the 1.6 million premature deaths in 2019, there are much more now. And there is of course, this year with the AQLI report, the most polluted countries are in India, 80 out of the 100. The first 80 out of the 100, 80, sorry, not the first, the 80 out of the 100 are in India. So this itself is an eye-opener, and it's got the most, 1/3 of the children in Delhi have damaged lungs. This is from 2019 that all of us did. The fact that we were told by the then Honorable Minister of Environment that he didn't want to see Harvard studies, he wanted to see Indian studies. So we showed them. So this is how, everybody, when you are a part of a movement and movements, there is, you have space for something you could be interested in, because people think that when you join a movement, it's only about a protest or a direct action. That's extremely important too, but you may not agree with doing that. But it's not only about that. It's about many more, things that add up, which is, like I said, advocacy. It could be your legal work. It could be research. It could be, some kind of, we've done so many things. People are doing creatively in terms of art, in terms of music. So just anything, any message to convey to the right people, of course. We can move, please. So, of course, the role of judiciary, like I said, the legal, that is extremely important, especially to some of us who are working in this space, and I'm sure many here will agree. So this was, of course, when Fridays for Future, when mostly everybody will know that Disha Ravi was arrested. And so this itself, speaks when the Supreme Court said that in the Patiala Court that citizens are the conscious keepers of government in any democratic nation. They cannot be put behind the bars simply because they choose to disagree with the state policies. So, of course, the poor kid had to go through this, but then there was a precedent now, and it just protects, many from not, getting. This was very, very strange, and it was not meant to be. Now, something like I've been working in this space with many others for years, for decades, and all we have got is a lot of respect and credibility. No officer, no government, no politician has ever come and threatened. Nobody's ever done anything like that. So if you're doing everything right in your boundaries, within the laws, there's less likely that, so this notion is also wrong. We must fight for it. We must do the right things to make that change. And that is, of course, I ask the adults mostly to understand that. The recent, this historic order we got, from the Supreme Court about the right against climate change. So again, it was very, very heartening to see everybody appreciates that. There are loopholes, there are things, but that's all right. But at least there's a step forward. And something like the Madras High Court recognized trees as living entities. So this helps anytime anybody goes to a court, taking a tree, it just helps you, So judiciary is extremely important because in the end, if we want that real time change, that especially when something goes wrong, now, as you know, from Aravali's to Rage to Molim in Goa to, Hasdeo to, I could just keep naming, and we'll be in the next 1 hour, we'll be just naming the movements and the various forests that are being destroyed mostly. And so there's just no way. But when movements join, when there is work, you'll be surprised that many people are common here who are working, the people who are actually in the legal or who are doing the research or who are coming forward. So it really helps, it supports. If anybody wants to do, see, recently we got some tree ambulance order for Delhi. We're getting 12 tree ambulances now because there was nothing to protect the trees. It's always when you want to, they have a lovely website which works beautifully when you want to ask for a tree cutting permission. Bhavreen knows that, he's struggling every day with this. Or you want to do pruning, you'll get a permission. But when you want to say, you come and protect my tree, there's nothing available. So after years of this struggle, many like Bhavreen, etc., we're putting all these complaints, this came in. So judiciary helps. Even talking on the international level, I wanted to just quote quickly, like the Rosamund in the UK. She's a mother, and she lost a 9-year-old daughter to air pollution, and she took this up, with the in the courts there, and it was the first time that ever in the world the reason in the death certificate was air pollution. So far, that is the only case in the world that says air pollution is the reason of death. And that case became huge. And she's, of course, managed to bring in, they're bringing trying to bring the Clean Air Act, which should also be brought in India. And these are the changes which will actually, help in that intergenerational, equity, or what we are trying to sort out here for the children, for our future. Because if we don't, leave the policy right and don't bring these correct, laws and policy in place, of course, implementation is another story, enforcement is another story. But if we, at least the policy is correct, there will be some ways to go into that. But if that is incorrect, like the recent, dilution of the Forest Conservation Act, the attempt to do that, then similarly, many such things, then it's a disaster. That is something, we will not be able to, change that. I was just, sorry, because I just can't, I was trying to see this. Yeah. So this is I was reading that the indigenous people, they're the 6% of the world's population, and they protect the 80% of the world's biodiversity. But unfortunately, they're never in the decision-making space. I was just looking down this 2 days ago. And so this is why that we have to work to bring everybody, all these important stakeholders stakeholders together. And we can go to the next, please. Thank you. Yeah, so of course, this is all of you know more than me. And the social media and the role of technology has been absolutely amazing. And not only, I don't know why it doesn't say media and the media. So I'm going to start with the media, that the media has been absolutely fantastic. At least I can say that for whatever experience I've had in my life, they are the only ones who have supported. I mean, who cares what, my right to breathe is saying, or Delhi Trees SOS, or New Delhi Nature Society, or Bhavreen, it means nothing, because when it gets published, it's the way it reaches people and giving out the right messages. Of course, you have your days when something is misquoted and stuff like that. All that is already part of the game. But I have seen journalists really passionately working, for these stories on a daily basis, and something that anybody who's looking to do must keep your connects and your information always going to the media. Don't think it's not being published. Someday, sometime, it will start getting its space, and that's the way it is. And of course, technology has come a long way. I remember the first online petition was in about 2014, and it was so fascinating that you could actually go on it, and you could just click that, and it'll go to the concerned ministry. So and now it's just become a normal thing. Even by Right to Breathe, it was Jhatka was coming in that time, and Jhatka formed that first online petition. And now, so sometimes we all think that, yeah, but what is the need of these online petitions? Don't bring you results, but yes, they do, because those numbers add up to showing the strength of the people who are asking, or the strength of the demands. When it comes to either showing the media or showing to the authorities. But of course, I will, I'd like to, also stress that these online petition numbers do not overtake or kind of substitute the numbers that need to be there on the physical ground. Like, say, we wanted to save trees for Central Vista, or you wanted to do something equally important in Hasdeo. There were only those 20 people or 8 people, which is really, really sad. Even for the big protests, you have 300 people coming in, or 400 people showing up in a city which has 23 million people. So obviously that demand, which must, be shown and expressed, so that the governments think that, yeah, we are doing the right thing, that is quite important. And we must not hesitate in our own way. If you agree with it, and if you know groups, and they're safe, they're good, and they're legit groups, you must not hesitate to participate. It only gives you credibility. It only get you more respect. There's nothing to run away from it. Social media, of course, everyone knows social media. It's been again extremely important. I don't think I need to really elaborate on that, because I saw that last session went way ahead. And so I'll just, conclude later, but I'll just request Bhavreen, would you be able to come in? And he's going to now, Bhavreen has this New Delhi Nature Society. So again, I'd like to introduce this, that, so recently what happened also, that there's something we wanted, one of this tree ambulance case. So they said the High Court gave an order, because we were telling, kind of telling them what we needed. So as a tree ambulance and an arborist. Surprisingly, we didn't even have an arborist in the country, and which is so important. So we, started writing now to the universities, and I request Bhargavi also to take a view of this, that, all these IMPRI and various good universities, that they can take up, courses for being for arborists. And so these are things that come up. But until then, organizations like Bhavreen, they actually work with the children from such a little age, of tree hugging, climbing. Suddenly you get these lovely messages of that there are fireflies in a park. Let's go see them. The children will join him. So those are the kind of things that actually bring you close to nature. You cannot suddenly expect an IS officer become a forest officer now, to come and start loving nature. It has to start from the beginning, and I really believe in it. And Viren really helps to take part of this. I don't know how will he join this, Preksha, to speak.
Yes.
Hi.
Oh, you're here. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize. Yeah, thank you. Okay, over to you, please. Thank you.
Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is Bhavreen. I'm the founder of the New Delhi Nature Society, and actually I'm a commercial pilot. I started this organization to save trees and the wildlife in Delhi, and we've been also working on reviving water bodies. We've revived some lakes in South Delhi, and we're also working with the authorities to save the trees in the city. Plus, we go to schools and colleges, and yeah, we work with RWAs. We have all these fun nature walks, camping, farming. It's all with the practical experience that the participants, the children of all ages, they learn how to connect with nature. So we get small children, maybe 2-3 years old, all the way up to senior citizens in their 80s and 90s. To see a senior citizen climb a tree after 50, 60 years, you see the happiness on their face, and they don't want to come down because it's an experience which they've missed for most of their life. And that's happening in the big cities because the tree climbing, the art of tree climbing is being left in the rural area mostly now, where kids in villages, they're able to climb trees. They know the names of trees, they know the uses of the trees. And in the big cities, the children don't know about the trees around them. This is a disease called tree blindness. In tree blindness, the patient is unable to see trees in their environment. So sometimes they might walk into a tree, sometimes they drive into trees. And if a tree is cut outside their house, they won't even notice that it's missing. I think maybe even I had tree blindness at one point, but I figured out how to get rid of this disease. The best way is to spend more time with trees, understand the trees, stand under the trees to understand the trees, and climb trees, identify trees, take pictures, just everything with trees. Once you start spending time around the trees, you'll start understanding everything else better. You'll start understanding the behavior of birds and insects and the flowers, the food, even the air pollution, the climate, the temperature, the heat wave we're going through. The answer to everything is trees. That's what I've experienced in the last 10 years. The main reason why we're not living on the moon right now is because there are no trees there. And same with Mars. So unless we have trees in place, we will not survive. And the way in big cities like Delhi, what's happening is the roads are increasing, buildings are increasing, concrete surface area is increasing, but the trees and the soil space is all decreasing. And is this good for us? Definitely not. We've seen the newspaper articles where we're seeing that the citizens of Delhi have lost 12 years of their life because of the air pollution here. And that's not just us, that also includes the politicians living here, the journalists living in the city, the scientists, the doctors, everybody living here. We're all breathing in the same air, and our lifespan is being reduced just because of the air pollution. The same air pollution which was supposed to get absorbed by the trees is now getting absorbed by the lungs of your family. So it's better to have the trees to purify the air, and we all need to get more involved and start saving these trees. We've been doing this campaign this week about the temperature under the trees and the temperature outside the trees. I just did it today only, and I'll probably post the picture online in some time. So the monitor we had under the tree, it was fine, but when we took it outside the tree in the direct sunlight, within a few minutes, the screen melted. It was so hot that the screen melted, and we can't read what's written on the screen because it's so hot. And imagine that's what's happening to the screen, that the devices are not prepared to handle so much heat. even the human bodies are not prepared to handle so much heat. We're seeing so many people dying all over the country just because of the heat, nothing else. And if they were standing under a tree, maybe they would have survived. So yeah, the temperature difference was between 7 to 10 degrees. And that's quite a lot. Maybe the temperature would have been higher if the device would have not melted. So yeah, trees are really important. We have been trying to campaign about this, spread awareness to get more people involved, because if it's just a handful of people, we can only make so much impact. And if many more people get involved, then we'll save a lot more trees. We need a bigger army, and by going to schools and colleges, by having all these workshops to connect people with nature, by connecting kids with nature, giving them a good experience with the trees, tree climbing, then they want to save the trees, they want to save nature, and they want other people to have that same experience. So yeah, I think a lot of people who are getting trees cut now are actually, maybe they were missing this exposure to trees in their childhood. That's why they're allowing all the trees to get destroyed. So yeah, we have our social media pages. There's Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, where we are posting all our information, all our activities, all our campaigns. We even have a monthly newsletter which we send out, and we put out a schedule of events on our website every month. So whoever likes to join us, they can come join us, spend some time in nature, explore the big green areas within the city. In November, we do 30 green zones in 30 days. So 30 nature walks in 30 days, different locations all over the city. People who have lived here their entire life have not visited these places. So we take them, we make them experience it, have a good experience, make sure we don't get lost. And then, yeah, we learn about all the lakes inside there, the the different scenic beauty over there, the different birds over there. There's a few secret places where I know where we see fireflies. So I take people to see those fireflies. And we are also actively trying to protect these places from bogus plans. Like, some people, wherever they see green on the map, wherever they see trees, the greenery, they just think about concretizing that space with whatever. Could be a mall, it could be a hotel, could be just a plain parking spot. But this is a kind of mindset which needs to change. And other parts of the planet, people are going back to greenery, but here it's not happening so much. So we're trying to influence the future generations to take up these positions of authority so that they can make better decisions than the people who are making the decisions now. Start deconcretizing the city, make more soil space, increase the greenery. We should all have green roofs. That'll make a big difference to the ambient air temperature and pollution within our colonies. So now I think I should start the quiz. I have a small quiz with a few questions. How are we going to do this? We can do it on the chat. So I can ask the question and people can give the answers here. Okay, so what is tree blindness? Is it a video game? Is it when you climb a tree, then you become blind? Is it a disease where the tree cannot see you? Or is it a disease where the patient cannot see trees in their environment? So you can give your answer in the chat here. D is correct. Yeah. Patient can't see trees. Very good. So now we'll go to the next one. Which is the most dangerous creature on the planet? Is it dolphin? Is it earthworms? Is it trees? Or is it humans? Okay, humans. Wow, we got a lot of smart people in this group today. So, okay, a true or false question. protecting your country's environment is a patriotic act. True or false? Okay, everybody's giving the right answers today. False. Somebody said false. So actually, it's Article 51A, Part G of the Constitution of India. It says that it's a fundamental duty of every citizen of India to protect the environment, the rivers, the forest, and be compassionate to animals. So it's a fundamental duty. Nobody can stop you from protecting the environment. Okay, now the next true or false question. Animals have feelings like humans do. True or false? True, true, true. Yes. Everybody's got this one right. 3 points for everyone. Okay, next one. Covering the soil around a tree with cement is good for the health of the tree. True or false? Covering the soil around the tree with cement is good for its health. False, yeah. It's false because when you put cement around the tree, what happens is the water cannot go into the ground. It cannot reach the roots of the tree. And when the tree is trying to expand, it's trying to grow bigger. It cannot because it's being choked with the cement. So because of this, the roots become weaker, the tree becomes weaker. No nutrition can go into the roots. So yeah, with just one small gust of wind, the trees which have become weak with concretization, those are the trees that fall down on people's cars and on people also. Okay, let's do another 1 or 2 questions. How about this? Can I turn the camera? Yeah. Which tree is this? Oh, it's blurry. Now, yeah. Which plant is this? Which tree is this from? Any ideas? Yes, we got 2 people got it right. It's the people tree. So people pray to this people tree. It's the relative of the banyan tree, the ficus, and it gives us oxygen at night as well. Okay. Now, let me see if I have another question here. Okay, what about this bird here? Any idea which bird this is? This is the Asian quail. It's the male quail. The female is black and white. Okay. So I think that should cover the quiz for today. We put up all these quizzes on our newsletter. So you can check out our website. It's ndns.in. And there's a page for newsletters. And at the bottom of the page, you can enter your email address so that you can get the monthly newsletter. Also, there's a Facebook WhatsApp icon, so you can join our WhatsApp groups. So thank you all for joining us for the quiz today. And if you have any feedback, you can let us know.
Thank you so much, Bhavreen, and thank you. I'd just like to thank everyone, and I know you're all short on time. Everybody's been very patient, and thank you. Thank you, Priksha.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you, sir. We have one question from Anvesha Maharana ji. If we could quickly answer that as well. Anvesha has asked that what is the effective path interrelation between activism and advocacy, especially in the era where movements are actively suppressed?
Yes, so whenever there is like a threat, you feel scared, things like that. Even the Warrior Mom chapters in many rural areas. Like I'll just give you an example of a village in Odisha near Cuttack, where a train comes in. the train passes by and the coal is taken out of the train, and then they mix some chemicals, which is absolutely illegal, and put back. And in this process, there is a huge amount of fly ash, and then the villagers are getting affected. And then how one of the mums from there, she heard about us, contacted, and then for a couple of years we are fighting this, and which is normal, because nothing gets done so soon. So she was threatened, and even by her village people, that and she's obviously a woman, and she has children, and she's worried when they go out, stuff like that. So what we try to do is that you start, with the simplest thing is start posting maybe in a WhatsApp group or something, a group that you have, the air quality every day. It's as simple as that. I'm just giving an example. It could be something very simple, but you keep doing that repetitively, like seeming rather it is advocacy. You are trying to raise that issue of showing that there is air pollution. So then nobody responds for so many days. It doesn't matter. You just keep doing it, writing small, anecdotes, sharing some news, which is published news, always helps. It shows more credibility, anything that's relevant. And slowly you'll see how this, the real advocacy in your little community group, starts bringing people. They start adding, your strength becomes bigger. Even for the water, a colony in Delhi was trying to show this water situation, and they couldn't get anything out, no support. There were just 2 or 3 people. They started sharing every day a TDS. Every morning there was 1 or 2 volunteers who would do that, put in the group. After it took them about 8-10 months, and now there's a huge a group that is formed who are willing to actually take more action. So advocacy comes slowly. I know it's never easy, but in a very mild way, rather than shouting and screaming and doing things that are not needed. This brings in numbers very naturally. I really believe in that, and it works very, very well.
Thank you for your answer, ma'am. I would like to invite Bhargavi ma'am for her remarks, and in the meanwhile, participants can put their questions in the Q&A box and raise their hands while ma'am gives her remarks. Ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Preksha, and thanks to both Bhavreen and Viret for that wonderful session. Thanks to her for walking us through, the starting of the environmental movement in India, and that beautiful Chipko picture, which is still so relevant today. It reminds me of all the stories that I have read myself of Gaura Devi and Chandni Prasad. But I would urge all our participants to read that, because it's so inspiring that the environmental movement in India did not start in the cities. It started, where the forests were, and how the women there were attached to those forests. And talking about air pollution, I think today, if at all, there is so much of, policy level discussions, the monitoring programs, any regulation that is happening, I think the credit should go to warrior moms and all their sisters around, because had it not been for them, I don't think we would have been able to push the authorities, both the regulatory authorities and the other decision makers, to the level at which we are discussing today. Yes, the answers are going to be slow. It's not so easy talking about air pollution, because it's so difficult in a world where we are driven by oil to say no to oil, right? Most of the emissions that come from vehicular pollution today, and of course all the construction that's happening in our cities. It's going to take some time, but at least there are some measures in place, and those measures are in place. It is because of this particular movement. And Bhavreen raised a very important point of arborists. When I was in college, when I just passed out of my master's in botany, the only subjects that were offered to us as specialization were all the applied botany subjects like microbiology, biotechnology, tissue culture, taxonomy, physiology, plant physiology. All of that was completely removed, because in the 90s we were shifting from this phase where, you know, everything became a quick fix learn, a quick solution kind of a phase, where traditional scientific knowledge was no longer considered useful. And most of us were forced into doing these subjects, which whether we liked it or not, those were the things we had to take up as specialization. Many years later, after doing what I did, about 10 years ago, when we were fighting the biopiracy case in the High Court and then the Supreme Court and then also at the National Green Tribunal, we got a reply in one of the court-related documents from the government, and also we were going through the CAG reports. And in one of the CAG reports, the CAG had raised several questions as to the forests and what was happening to the biodiversity of the country, particularly the plant biodiversity. There were so many questions raised by the CAG, and in one of the answers, we found that the MOEF had actually replied saying that we don't have trained arborists in the country, and that's the reason we've not been able to protect what we have. So this was in 2012. From 2012 to 2024, has anything changed? So that is where I think, as she said, it is important to talk to universities like the Azim Premji University or, you know, the Shiv Nadar University or any other university to bring back these traditional science subjects into our learning. And see, for instance, it was in 1984 that the Bhopal gas tragedy happened. It was only after that we got our environmental laws, and it was only after that across the country we started environmental science programs, and I'm one of the products of that. Earlier to that, there were hardly any environmental science programs in the country, right? So it's only when disaster strikes we wake up to it. And now we are heading towards that disaster, and it's very important that we have full-fledged undergraduate and you know higher levels of learning about the plant diversity, and India being home to one of the largest number of angiosperms today in the country. And thanks to Viren for that wonderful session. I think that is a need of the hour. These are initiatives again that is happening in all the major cities. But a long way to go, because again, it is only those of us who speak English, who are connected to social media, who are in all these various circles, have access to this. Again, thanks to where I live, where I have grown up, because I have been a part of the Birdwatchers Field Club in Bangalore. And it is because of that I still feel connected to everything around me. I hear a little bird call and I run out of, you know, outside to see from my window if I can see the tree or the bird where it is sitting, and I can identify some birds based on the calls, not all. But how many of us even have that in us, right? So a couple of years ago, I had a little nephew who came to me and said, oh, I have to do a assignment on environment related subject. I have decided to do essay or some project work on all the birds that have gone into the red list. I'm like, can you go outside and identify 10 birds? You can just write about them. Don't worry about the ones which have already reached the red list. Do what you can really see and do, right? So I think that is where programs like what Viren just showed us is so important, because all of us have lost that connection with nature, with trees, with our birds, and also the sense of cleanliness that has largely come from the West. All our bureaucrats, they are, you know, sent to all these Western cities. They learn about a whole lot of management kind of stuff. They come back and they promote the cementing of all our roads, pavements, corridors, in and around our apartment complexes, driveways, everywhere we just cement everything. And Bangalore recently, last week, had some 200 odd trees that just fell down because of the rains. And it's a very sad situation that there is so much disconnect in our learning, so much disconnect in our understanding of things. And I think programs like this is what is going to wake us all up, and it will help in fixing the big gaps, and particularly the theme of today, one of the themes being intergenerational equity. I think it is so important to leave behind a good environment for future generations. And I'm so happy that these programs are mushrooming across all cities, and eventually they will all be connected. And, we'll have a next generation of people who are much more connected to the natural world, and will also use science and technology to make the right decisions. Yes, today's technology has made so much impact on all our lives that we are probably constantly looking into our phones rather than looking into our little gardens outside, or watching for those dragonflies or butterflies, or those kind of things. Another little story is about, recently I learned that how the dragonflies go all the way from India to Africa. They follow the monsoon apparently, and isn't that fascinating? So little wonders like this is what will keep our brains and our thought processes alive as well. So with that, I would like to hand over the forum back to Preksha, and thanks to both Bhavreen and Viren for that wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your comments. Bhavri ma'am, not a question, but there is a comment in the chat that I would like to flag. It's by Maria Sajan. She says that at Cubbon Park in Bangalore, there's a ban on climbing trees as well. So just
well, I think Viren, and you really need to write a complaint. And something that, thank you, Bhargavi, for pointing out, which I didn't, because the last question was very appropriate, that yes, it's very important to complain. Don't just write on a Facebook or a thing. And if you need, just please connect her to me. So I'll give her a little draft of, yes, you can't put nails, you can't tie, put hoardings, put lights, that they all are doing. But they don't want you to climb the trees, the children to climb the trees. It's ridiculous, so that is something, I've heard that before. So, and another thing which Viren, go ahead, you say it, because he's very keen to say that at least in Delhi we have we are he's on top of the forest department, so he wants to say something. And I think that should be replicated with every other city as well. Yeah, please, Viren.
Yeah, we also face this issue sometimes. The guards in the park will come and tell us not to climb the trees in Lodi Garden in Nehru Park. But then we tell them that when the tree is getting cut, then you don't speak up. And when children are enjoying climbing the trees, then you want other stuff. So their issue is that either the branch will break or the child will break a bronze. So yeah, but they need to be more active about saving the trees. And when we ask them to tell us on the video that children are not allowed to climb trees, then they hesitate, and then they walk away and they let us climb the trees. Also, I've spoken to the senior officials of all these parks, so they have confirmed that we can climb the trees. In case anyone ever stops us, then I just make them talk to them on the phone. So it's good to speak to someone. And in Delhi, we have this green helpline of the forest department. So whenever we see any trees which are cemented, or trees which have nails in them, trees which have cameras or signboards or even wires wrapped around them, these are all bad for the tree and can cause damage to the tree. So there's a green helpline. If you report it on that, then the forest department is supposed to take action on that immediately. I'll tell you all the green helpline numbers, so please note it down. And whenever you see it cement around a tree or nails, signboards, wires, anything on the tree, call this number, tell them the location.
Delhi. Only Delhi, no?
This is only for Delhi. The number is 011 233 78513. I'll say it again, 011 233 78513. It's the green helpline of Delhi Forest Department. Complain to them, and if no action has been taken, keep making complaints on the same thing every day until someone actually comes and does something. They're also going to get tired at some point. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you, Beta.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your very engaging and comprehensive and detailed presentations. Moving on, we would like to thank you for coming here today, sharing with us, and we look forward to learning from you in further IMPRI events. Thank you so much. For a final session, I would like to invite Professor Shyamala Maniji, Senior Advisor, Wash and Waste Management, Center for Environmental Health, Public Health Foundation of India, PHFI, retired professor at National Institute of Urban Affairs, NIUA, New Delhi, and visiting professor at IMPRI. Professor will be guiding us on the topic of environment action advocacy. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. And I'm so happy that, we have a chance to discuss about this subject. Can I share the presentation just now?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Can you see it? I can make it full screen.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
It hasn't gone to full screen as yet. Okay. So I just wanted to make one small correction. From, of course, at CEH, PHFI, I'm there as a senior advisor, but now more at the Center for Chronic Disease Control. And of course, the other things you have already introduced. And so today my topic is going to be on circular economy and waste management. That is what you suggested, I think. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm thankful to IMPRI for this opportunity. And I hope that, I'll be able to share some good insights into these in this subject. And if there are any questions, of course, I'd be more than happy to take it. So to really talk about the circular economy, I think most of us know what it is today because, it's being talked about so much. But just to recall, basically what they call as a linear model, like what it suggests, is most of the things that we use in our daily lives, we either we buy it from somewhere or we bring it from somewhere and then we use it. And whenever we feel that, oh, this is either not useful or you're finished using it, or even after you have consumed something, there's something which is left, all that is considered as waste, and then we just try to get rid of it. So it could be, so that kind of a thing where, it's in a single line where you procure something from somewhere and then you use it for some time and then you discard it. That is generally considered as a linear model, as opposed to a circular model, which is, reusing something many times, not considering things as waste so easily. Trying to use one thing which has you have finished using or you feel has been very useful for you, and then trying to either reuse it or recycle it or bring it to or use it again in a different way, or give it to somebody who might want it. Those kind of attitudes and those kind of behavior, that kind of behavior is the circular aspect of the whole, you can say, resource management, I would say, rather than waste management. It is the aspect of resource management. And of course, the most important of all this is the biodegradable waste, because that is very, very conducive for this particular type of approach to any kind of resource that we have, because biodegradable waste, as you know, what we normally eat or consume, or which is maybe food waste, or which may be anything that can easily degrade by the action of microorganisms in air, water, or any or soil. That kind of thing is easily returnable and is very, very conducive to this aspect of circularity, because as we know, these microorganisms, they help in the degradation of this biodegradable material and can give us compost or manure, and that we can reuse for growing our vegetables, or you can even just grow greenery around your house. So, of course, it is not only the biodegradable matter which can be taken to the circular economy. Even other things can be taken. There are lots of resources which are being reused and have been introduced into the circular economy, like many of the resources that we use, whether it is metal or paper or glass. Less so the plastics, because of, I'll explain that, because of its toxicity. But there are many other resources, including, of course, water and several other resources which can go into the circularity concept. So I just put this banana leaf because I think whether it could be a banana leaf or a pattal leaf, or now, so this kind of a leaf plate where it has now become a little more fashionable. Earlier, it wasn't so much. That it lends itself also to the fact that, it can be hygienic and it can, serve as a very good disposable plate. And now, even the, you can, of course, use reusable cups, or now they have also started making those donas. They were there earlier also, and now it's become quite fashionable. There are molds. So as I said earlier, the food and biodegradable resources that we consume are very conducive to this circular circularity that we can bring about in our economy as well as in our behavior. So as I said that, so here we have a diagram here which shows what I was saying, that the food waste and even the garden waste that can be. So earlier, we didn't have all these complex structures like a grinder. That is because, in a village type of a situation, it doesn't matter whether, you keep it for a little longer time or a shorter time. So people would not necessarily try to chop it or grind it or reduce the size, and they would just put it in a compost pit along with some cow dung and some straw, and it would be composting there. But in an urban type of a situation, if you want to go for circular economy or circularity in some of the resources, especially the biodegradable matter, then it becomes a bit of a necessity to use some of these equipment because one has the constraint that in most of our cities, there isn't enough space or even the time and the, one can say the freedom to leave something composting, and it may give off some smell for a long period of time. So here, because of the density of population and our housing, buildings and the housing and the habitation that we have, we also have to conserve the space, and we cannot cause nuisance by leaving a compost pit to compost for a long time and become a little stinky as well. So the situation in an urban area becomes a little different, and therefore we have to bring into operation some of these things like a chopper or a grinder, or make provisions in such a way that the composting can happen in a sort of a controlled situation where you don't have to cause nuisance to your neighbors by the stink it causes, etc. So that is what that was an example to show how among the resources that we use, food is a resource that can easily, food and any kind of a biodegradable material, including garden waste, etc., can easily go into a circular economy. And it also leads to giving livelihoods. It gives a very good byproduct, and it does not have a very high input cost. And, the resource is very easily available. Even the processing, it by itself, it self-compresses and reduces its volume, the composting process itself. So that way, it's very, very ideal as an example for a circular economy. But however, if you want to really understand that, how the linear model and the way of thinking in a way, as I explained earlier, that, we continuously bring in resources or purchase or acquire resources and then make it into a single linear model where we just use and throw, use and throw, use and throw. So to bring many of the other things that we use in our homes, in our offices, in our schools, institutions, anywhere, even in a factory, one has to really plan. It cannot be done without planning. It cannot be done without designing properly. It cannot be done just as a last minute or end of pipeline type of a mechanism. So like I remember just 2 days back, I was giving a talk on 5th of June to a set of students, NSS volunteers from Madras University. And one of them asked me, they said that, we talk about renewable energy, but, putting so many solar panels, what happens to them after so many years when they cannot be used? So I appreciate that question, because that's exactly what I'm trying to say, that you cannot, bring in circular economy in the middle of something. So if you are really going to make renewable energy sustainable, and you're going to say that, okay, when I use renewable energy and I'm going to focus on renewable energy, I'm also going to look at zero waste. I'm also going to make the whole process circular economy. Then you have to plan even the solar panels and, all the material that is going to be used, and, the way you are going to put it up, and how much of land will be used, or whatever other resources. You have to plan right from the beginning as to what will happen after a particular number of years. How will you replace it? What are the ways in which you will keep replacing in such a way that some of the material is reused or recycled, or it doesn't become a nuisance and it is left in most probably extremely rural areas or remote areas where nobody will go to pick it up, and then it will actually end up creating another garbage or waste problem. So, that I just gave that as an example to say that when it comes to food waste or biodegradable waste, because it is very, very nature oriented and nature takes care of it, and even the processing, the microorganisms and everything is being done by nature, we don't realize how simple, how easy it is. But when we have to adopt that same circularity in something which is again for the sake of environment and for the sake of conserving resources, we have to plan, and we have to really plan it in such a way that right from the first step, you will have to start thinking how the resources will go and it will not cause a nuisance, and how it will be recovered, and how it may be either reused or maybe parts of it refurbished and then recycled, or at least not left in such a way that it will cause further problems. So is circular economy inclusive? Now, that is a very important question. Today, the inclusiveness is become very, very important whenever you are doing any kind of redesigning or recreation of even livelihoods. I think our current elections have thrown up this particular issue in a very, very clear way. That, you know, if you just imagine that you are going to do something which will create a more number of jobs or make something look very beautiful, and you imagine that that will lead to better economy, better economic situation, it will give more revenue. But if you don't design it properly in a way that it will be inclusive, and it causes, you know, a lot of expenditure, and it also causes, you know, further use of very, you know, resources which are in really, you know, available only in very small quantities. Then, and it is causing a lot of distress among the people and the workers. Then, you know, then it does not necessarily become very inclusive, or it doesn't become a proper circular economy in that way. So, as I said, you know, it's very easy. Many people just talk about circular economy, zero waste, in a way as if it is the easiest thing to do. But technically, it might not be so easy. So even if you have to say that, you know, I've heard so many people tell me that, oh, you know, plastics or the bottles, plastic bottles, they are being, you know, what is the problem with them? After all, they can be converted, PET can be converted into fibers, and it can be converted into textiles and blah, 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 and all that. So, but even though, of course, it is not completely degradable, therefore it is not in a way completely circular economy, but even if you consider it to a certain extent, even the fact that collection of those and whether they are in the correct condition in which it can be retrieved and it can be taken back into a circularity in a way that you can give, you know, livelihoods, and you can give jobs. And if you really go and see the factories where these kind of PET is converted into fibers, it's extremely complex. I mean, in the sense that it is expensive, it needs very high investment, and it is only because our textile industries are using that as a resource, as a raw material, in place of virgin material. Because of that, they themselves have invested so much and created that type of a, you know, in an industry. It is not possible for a medium scale or a very small scale industry to have, you know, make fiber from PET flakes so easily. I mean, it's almost impossible. So that's what I was trying to say, that to make circular economy inclusive, you have to build in a lot of design. And even for whether it is electronic waste, suppose you want to build a new washing machine from an older washing machine, it has to be highly planned. The same way with a laptop or even a mobile phone, whether there are parts which can be actually refurbished and put into newer products. So as I said, it is the mindset to change the consumption patterns and to think in a way that, you know, you right from the process of mining or right from the process of acquiring that particular natural resource from the environment to converting it and to making it into products, it has to be highly thought through. And even the energy inputs, because on one hand, you know, you are saying that, you know, you are really becoming environmental, you are trying to prevent pollution. And that is the reason why you are doing, you know, you're adopting a circularity in economy. On the other hand, you know, if it requires, you know, energy, or it produces waste which is highly toxic or hazardous, then the purpose is lost. one of the things that is happening in the entire environmental ecosystem is that, people working in the energy sector are working separately. People who are working in the waste sector are working separately. And, so you find that different sectors, even conservation, sometimes I notice, people are working separately. So because of this lack of interconnectedness, even within the environmental ecosystem, we have people laughing at us sometimes and blaming us that, oh, these guys, the energy fellows actually create a bigger nuisance, and they talk about environment. So this is something that we really need to put into the mindset that, as environmentalists, as practitioners of creating a better environment, we need to also, interact with different branches of the environmental movement and see that we are taking in all the learnings. So even the waste management people need to know about biodiversity. The biodiversity people need to know about, what is happening in the other sectors, like maybe in the industries or maybe in renewable energy. So that is the way that we can actually bring in a more permanent type of a approach. And this is what is generally called as the life cycle analysis approach. That it is not only the, achieving a particular target for creating a better environment, but you look at the entire aspect of it, the life cycle of whatever you are trying to do. Whether you are constructing a house or a building, or whether you are even making a park or a garden, or making a play field for children, or create or even working in the waste management sector, that you take a life cycle approach. And of course, in the general area of livelihood creation. So in the circularity, there's always the technical cycles and the biological cycles. So it's really very, very important to understand what are the advantages and also the limitations of the biological systems. And at the same time, the technical cycles, whether, some of them are performing in such a way, especially when it becomes very large scale. So very often people bring about, small models, and then they say that, this is the best, so this is so simple and this is so good. And then they'll just give you an example of, maybe a few kilograms or, products which are coming out, which look very simple. But the same thing when it is expanded into a very large activity, and there's huge quantities of resources which are used, and you don't really plan properly as I said, in the life cycle approach, then you actually end up challenging the biological cycles. And the biological cycle is not able to, so you will find, when somebody makes a presentation about a very interesting industrial process, and they demonstrate saying that, oh, see, this is so easy, and this has got no impact on the environment, and this is a very small quantity, this gets absorbed, and this gets reused, and this is actually a resource for trees or animals or something like that. And then the same thing, when it is expanded into a very large activity, you find that the effluents that these are releasing into the water bodies or into the environment or into the air becomes in such a way that biological cycles, which operate at a much slower rate because they work on enzymatic reactions, which are always they work a little slowly, and also they work at almost the ambient temperature. They are not able to withstand, and that's the reason why you have a big contradiction that happens when between what is projected and what actually emerges. But there are environmental benefits if you really plan your economy properly, if you plan your activities properly, and if you study and you do the proper stoichiometry, you know what are the amounts that can actually be used, and what will come out, and what will be the rate at which it will come out, how when it enters the environment, what are the things that need to be looked at, and whether there are processes in the natural environment which can actually deal with it, or there are ways that we have to look at what are the possibilities where we have to assist the natural environment by, as I said, like how we were doing the biodegradable waste, maybe do a little bit of size reduction, or in a way enhance the natural biodegradability, or removing toxicity, or using resources which are less toxic. So when I say toxic, it doesn't necessarily always mean only highly toxic chemicals, or highly like, for instance, heavy metals or something like that. It could also be that something as simple as a chloride or a sulfate or something like that in very, very high quantities can also be toxic. So like, for instance, arsenic or fluoride. Was never considered as fluoride was never considered as something which was toxic. But then if you have very high quantities of coming out, as you know, it can cause a tremendous amount of health problems, and it can cause bone defects in people. So what we really need to look at in terms of the circular economy and waste management to a great extent is how do we do sustainable consumption? Because the whole question now today, when we have come to this at this timeline, when even the United Nations, you have heard people saying that we have only 2 years to set the planet right, or else, that kind of a thing. And even this year, the Secretary General has warned us that we are not able to control the heating of what you call as the global warming. We are not able to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We don't see that at all happening. And, the impact of anything higher than that on the environment, and especially for economies like ours, where, we are in geographically and in development terms placed in an extremely vulnerable situation, where we have a very large population living in very different biomes, even almost at the edge of the environment. You can see, you know of people who are living in river islands. You know of people who are living absolutely in the the shores of our oceans and seas. We know of people who are compelled to live in in situations where there is extreme heat or dryness, or in very high mountainous areas where they have no other choice, because they have been living there and that's their livelihood, and that's where they have to live in a very, very challenging circumstances, when they have to live without even the denseness in air is not there. So if you go to, say, if you have to live in Tibet, you have to be acclimatized to live in that kind of an environment. So it is not just a simple thing like, what to do with plastic waste or what to do with something like that. But, how we are going to be able to sustain all these communities in the coming years, especially if we are forced to give up some amount of land because of rising sea level, or we have to shift people because of extreme heat or extreme cold, then how are we going to really do it? So sustainability, so that is the reason why we need to look at the entire aspect of circularity in economy, and whether we can start designing in such a way that we don't occupy most of our land for dumping waste and wasting it, rather, use methods by which we don't have to keep on mining, or whether we can, get some of the metals and rare earths which we require for manufacturing from whatever has already been made. Because on one hand, we also have to see how to provide jobs and resources to our manufacturing, or at the same time, how do we grow healthy food? Most of our waters are, especially rivers, are highly contaminated. You can see the CPCB reports where most of our rivers are highly contaminated. Our soil is contaminated. And we find that even the food that is being grown, it is having the contamination in it. So as a country, and especially in a highly vulnerable situation as we are, with a fairly high population, very, people in very dire circumstances, and we are compelled to also give them jobs and find livelihoods for them, and also find the resources. Although we may have certain amount of resources, but are they in good condition, whether they are in a usable condition, and how do we really manage? So this is something, so the Sustainable Development Goals, no doubt, do help us on what are the things that we really need to focus on, and whether the circularity in our attitude and thinking and designing and, going forward, whether that can actually help in our, taking the country forward especially in situations in the future when climate change is also playing its very big role. So as we all know that, as you can see, the planetary boundaries is, where the biosphere integrity and the climate change and the stratospheric ozone depletion, ocean acidification, people losing fisheries in many places because of that, corals becoming less, and therefore fisheries becoming less, fresh water becoming less, and atmospheric, we just talked about the air pollution. So we really need to find out that, what are the kind of boundaries which are really operating on us, and how is it that we can do this donut economics, where, maximum number of people who are there, and how to make the circular economy inclusive, that the maximum number of people in our country, even whether they are extremely poor or living under very difficult circumstances, whether it is possible that they have livelihood, they have the basic resources like water, food, energy, health, education, nutrition, and various other types of justice, environmental justice that they are entitled to. So, of course, we all know about the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, IPCC, which has been warning us very regularly, and, about the ecological footprint. And so that is something that we can at least say that in our country, the ecological footprint per capita is very low. Because we are also, not only because we are poor, but also because as a country, as a culture, we tend to reuse and recycle much more. And we have also a tendency to like things which are, more natural rather than artificial, by and large. But of course, as Mr. Panda pointed out, some of the urban children, they are they have become really removed from the environment, and they may not know that we are so connected to nature, and we are still dependent, like the previous speakers have pointed out, that we still live on trees in more ways than you know. So humans have unlimited needs, and so the connection between the human beings and nature needs to be, of course, brought into focus, because only then you will really know what kind of environment you are living in and how nature really functions. Because we try to overestimate nature. And people, the way people talk to each other, oh, you can put this here and you can put this there, and nature will convert it into something. I've heard people say that, oh, if you plant trees and, even if you have sulfur dioxide in the air or nitrous oxide in the air, oh, it'll clean up everything. How? I don't know. I mean, I've most often only seen that the trees, the leaves become yellow, if at all, if there is excess sulfur dioxide. So, and if you have excess nitrous oxide, you'll probably create a microenvironment which is very hot, or maybe have acid rain. So, so you really have to live in nature, live with nature. And like Bhavreen was pointing out, maybe climb trees and understand the nature much more, so that you know as to how it functions, where its limitations are, how do you need to live with it, rather than as if use it as your waste dumping site, and as if it is your your cleanup washing machine or something like that. It's not. So infinite growth, is, of course, this is how we look at it. People keep talking about growth. Unfortunately, many governments keep talking about growth, as if growth is something which is, eternal, infinite, that it can go on and on and on, and it will not have any impact. And versus, of course, as I said, the where there is a boundary of nature, and beyond that, like if you go, if you increase the temperature above 2 degrees Celsius, you will have to live in a world, in a planet where you will be constantly facing some kind of natural disaster or the other. And it's not just urban flooding or water crisis. It can be much, much bigger than that. So, so that versus, what we are trying to say is, whether there is a possibility that you can have something like green growth, you have to, of course, think much, much more. Of course, people say that, there are many communities who say that, you completely degrow and, go back to nature or something, which may not be possible for communities or countries like ours, where, so many poor people are still not had even the basic necessities. So it becomes mandatory for countries like ours to find ways in which you can design the economy where you put less burden on the environment, understand the environment, design it in such a way that more number of people can derive benefit from it, and at the same time, have a mindset where they can develop. So decoupling growth with resource consumption, as I said. We really need to think of many, many innovative methods to do this. And of course, there is it's not an easy thing. So it needs to be really researched and understood. And in terms of the climate change impact in India, as I've already said, that it's a very highly vulnerable environment. And especially we have to think about the huge population. More than 54% of our population still dependent on agriculture as their livelihood, source of livelihood. And therefore, any kind of loss of crops because of heat or floods or drought or any other, or even losing nutrition or use of excessive pesticides or fertilizer or soil getting highly acidic, any of that will affect a very, very huge number of people. And as you can see, we are also continuously losing land in our, in our coastal areas, and the ocean, the sea level rise is going to cause a tremendous amount of disasters and ecological refugees. So it becomes both an environmental and a social factor, as you can see. And even in terms of thermal stress, as you can see that, it is slightly shifting towards more heat-related deaths. And it is becoming higher because of daily temperature. We have noticed it in the last several years. And this year it has been ever so much. You heard that even during the elections, the people who were conducting the elections, some of them, in fact, actually died because of heat stress. It was not only just the people who are voting, but even the people who were involved in the whole machinery. And therefore, even the heat action plans in Ahmedabad or in Pune or in various other cities, even in Delhi, it has started to happen, in Bengaluru, many other places, people have started to study how excess mortality is happening during certain times. And how waste management is sort of feeding into this is also because, in our country, with the rising urbanization, there's also a lot of wastage. So that is what I was trying to tell you. On one hand, we also have to look at the circularity or the redesigning of our economy for making it inclusive, generating much more livelihood, cannot be in the absence of putting a lot of mental, you can say, effort into finding out what are the ways of not wasting resources. So as you can see, we have issues about water supply. We have, any amount of problems with untreated sewage, which causes not only just a stink or a bad environment, it is also causing a lot of groundwater pollution. And urban housing, as everybody knows, is urban housing, urban transport, and even the stormwater drain because of the the kind of rainfall, like previous speakers have pointed out, having a whole lot of like 1 year's rainfall in just 1 day, or several months of the whole monsoon's rainfall in a few days. That can cause also a lot of distress. And to add to this, if we if we have an attitude of linear use of resources, bringing in material, using it and discarding it without thinking, will also cause the solid waste problem, which are now almost 30% of the water problem is being caused by the solid waste. Because either they are just filling up the waterways, they are polluting, they are not allowing flow, it causes drainage problem, it causes urban flooding, and of course it also causes a lot of wastage of resources. So, and also in terms of the space that is required. So even fresh water, which is, generally the source is rainwater, and it comes from mountains, and it comes through the big water bodies. Because of the solid waste being accumulated in, the bottom of these lakes and rivers, you find that even their capacity is reduced. So you find that demand gap in our urban environment or our entire environment is increasing because of this kind of a very, very linear attitude. And we are only able to address part of the problem every year, even with increased budgets. So as I said, many of our waste workers who are, so even today, the Hindu's editorial has a very clear this thing that almost 80% of the retrieval and recovery of material is still being done only by informal waste workers, but they are having to work under very difficult circumstances. As you know, both formal and informal workers, waste workers, are working in this extreme heat, also exposed to a lot of diseases and injuries. Therefore, one of the things about solid waste management, at least, we need to look at is that what unfortunately we are doing in many of our cities. But as Bhargavi pointed out, many cities are trying to change their habits with a lot of training and intervention. But cities like Delhi are still continuing. It is because the municipal commissioners are continuing to give concessionaire documents, concessionaire agreements to collection and transportation companies, which are just collecting and dumping. And I'll just give you a statistic that in Delhi, we are spending 1,750 rupees per ton for just collection and taking it to a particular dump site. And that is coming to, out of some 12 or 14,000 tons we produce, even if there is some recycling, 10,000 into 365 into 1,750, about 683 crores annually are being used only for collection and dumping. And that's why we have got these huge mountains of garbage, and which are becoming taller than Qutub Minar, and also generating a lot of methane. And methane, as you know, is 28 times got higher potential than carbon dioxide to increase greenhouse, increase the, the global heat, what they call as the climate, the actual greenhouse effect. And therefore, with very, very simple interventions, we can do away with this kind of a linear way of waste dumping, and take the help of waste collectors, give them better working conditions, better personal protective equipment, and make sure that this kind of a thing doesn't happen, that we are increasing the global climate heat, and at the same time creating diseases for ourselves. So there are also other toxic gases which come out of these kind of dump sites, because methane being highly inflammable, it burns, and while it burns, all the plastics and batteries and paints and everything burns, and all that is allowed into the environment. This is as you can see, the distribution of methane. So a lot of methane is coming, more than 11% is coming from the waste sector itself. This is just to give you, as I said, a roundup of how it is really undoing whatever we are trying to do through Swachh Bharat Mission by, increasing the global heat potential by just dumping. Because in most of our cities, including Delhi, where we have done a very detailed analysis of the organic waste which is being produced, is more than 60%. 62% of the solid waste generated in Delhi is biodegradable waste, and almost 80% of it is just being dumped. And that is degrading and creating methane, because it is being pressed under construction demolition waste or plastic waste or any kind of rejects, because we don't do proper segregation. And even if there are communities which are doing it, unfortunately, because of the vested interests of the collection and transportation companies, in collusion, you can say, unfortunately. I have no other word to use, which I seek apology, but unfortunately, in collusion with the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, which is continuing to give concessionaire agreements to such companies and actually building up this methane emission from our dump sites, and also causing high amount of groundwater and soil pollution. One of my PhD students has studied this in great detail, that all the areas around the dump sites in Delhi have up to 5-kilometer radius, very high quantities of heavy metals and other kind of polyaromatic hydrocarbons in their groundwater because of the leachate and because of the rainfall, which takes it and pollutes the water. And all, so many of the lessons, as you know, that which has already been discussed, that it is very important to have good quality data. You need to communicate with each other. This kind of a thing is applicable to whether it is solid waste or whether it is water conservation or air quality. This is really important. And of course, these kind of things are now available. We can use handheld devices. We can use several copy methods by which we can collect data. We can even, put actual geographical positioning for it. And of course, the most important thing is, which we realized during COVID, is that local governments and civil society and industry have to work together. And even in solid waste, this is the same thing as I explained earlier. It needs a lot of redesigning, and there's no point in industry trying to put the blame on municipalities and urban local bodies, and urban local bodies throwing it on somebody else. So as you can see that, whether it is, giving better working conditions for the workers, involving the people, as I said, here you can see, even the Rahgiri and various other types of processes involve the children. Here, it's a community in Gurugram, which is, doing its own waste management, making its own compost, and any amount of. So I would also take this opportunity, since Bhargavi is here, that I would like to really recognize Kasturi Bir, who really gave us this khamba, and which is a very easy method by which we can Poonam Kasturi Bir, as you know, who was the founder of the daily dump. So there are many simple methods, and involving school teachers. This is, of course, Ambikapur, how they did it. And here there are many places in Coimbatore, down south, and so as has been pointed out earlier also. So as you can see, the solid waste management rules gives this, that how the biodegradable waste has to be segregated, and that can be composted and made into biogas. Non-biodegradable can be recycled. Domestic hazardous and chemicals are the ones which need to be treated and put into TSDF. And even the domestic healthcare waste can be given to the common biomedical waste facility. And there are plants now in many places where construction demolition waste can be converted into, 95% of it can be converted into useful products. So as I I think I've maybe run out of time, right? Is that
Could you just briefly wrap it up?
Yeah, wrap up. So that is basically what I'm trying to do. That we are now trying to work at the ULB level and at the community level, and at how group housing levels. Even in my own block where I live here in Delhi, I'm continuously in touch with the urban local body. In our case, it's the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, to help us construct compost pits. And this is my own house. So I do home composting using a simple khamba, which is a terracotta recycling. And here it is in Bangalore, where they are doing it in a larger scale in communities. And these are some of the dry waste collection centers in Bangalore, where they are even separating the home healthcare waste and sending it to the by a common biomedical waste facility. This is again in Delhi, in a government colony in New Motibagh, where they have been able to make it into a zero waste colony by doing tray composting and even horticultural waste. So this is, in the new the Kidwai Nagar, new Kidwai Nagar complex, where they have a biogas plant, and they also have an MRF where they are separating the dry waste and selling it for recycling. And this is the biogas plant, which is generating biogas, and they are trying to use it for lighting and for recharging electric vehicle batteries in their basement. This is the Kidwai Nagar, new Kidwai complex. So as you can see, there are lots of ways in which and especially plastics, which is a very big issue now. And so many people keep saying that plastic is recyclable. Unfortunately, the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, where we have all been members and we have been contributing, we have found that not only the polyvinyl chloride and the polystyrene, which are hazardous, but even the HDPE and the LDPE, when you actually start to recycle, it gives off a lot of toxic byproducts. But even then, because of the importance of the livelihood factor, we are trying to make it as sustainable as possible. This is an MRF where we have tried to look at the air pollution and redesigning of the MRFs, material recovery facilities. And there are methods like this where we can collect waste from different communities, especially paper, glass, metal, rubber, so many of these where reasonably good recycling without too much of hazard can be done. And this is the article which I told you which has come out in the Hindu today. And it talks about how the EPR needs to be also modified and how we need to give better working conditions to the waste workers, and also build a community where people have got this better attitudes, more circularity attitudes. And so these are ways in which you can provide. This is what is known as just transition, where some of the waste can be actually made without making it very polluting and heating and producing granules which are contaminated, but actually making into reusable products through craft and through other. These are some of the NGOs who are doing this, even converting flowers into colors and perfumes. So these are methods by which you can do a lot of reuse and recycling, and of course things like using plastics for roads or converting it back into diesel and petrol. That is also an option, but it has to be done extremely carefully. This is again in Delhi. And there are also ways in which you can not use too much heat, but press the plastic waste into making structurals like walls or benches or park utilities. So I think I will not take more time, since there should be some time for asking questions. So in case, so even sanitary waste, now we have a technology where the blood or the body fluid is removed and treated through effluent treatment, and the plastic and the paper is sterilized and recovered. So you can also use degradable material. So I think I will leave it at this, and thank you very much. And if there are any questions, I'd be very happy to answer.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for a very comprehensive and enlightening talk. We do have questions. Should I go ahead with them?
Yes, please.
Okay, so yes, Neeraj, would you like to ask a question first?
Sure. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Professor, thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Neeraj Bhatia, and I also work for a solid waste management non-profit in the Indian Himalayan region called Waste Warriors. And I would like to seek your opinion on the recent I guess, law
Mhm.
where the Ministry of Roads, Highways has
Mhm.
stated, by the Home Ministry, has stated that a certain percentage of the construction of roads
Mhm.
and highways
Mhm.
will have to utilize landfill waste, specifically from Delhi,
Mhm.
and considering some of the research that you pointed out on the toxicity of the landfill waste, because it's
Mhm.
primarily mixed waste.
Mhm.
Professor, I'd like to hear your views on this mandatory sort of provision of
Mhm.
using this type of waste to build infrastructure, specifically roads. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Yes, it's a very important question. You see, what happens is in the remediation process, what they call as remediation of landfills or dump sites, they are using, trommels. Trommels are basically cylindrical sieves, which can separate solid, very large parts and very small, like soil or grit. So what they are saying is that earlier the thing was that they were saying that the grit and the soil that comes out, which is has most of the degraded, biodegradable material, and hence it was called as inert. But then even IIT Delhi and many of us, who have actually taken samples of it, and as I said, have tested it, we found that it contains a lot of hazardous chemicals and especially heavy metals, because it's been lying there in the dump site for a very long time, and the leachate and everything has helped it to extract a lot of these highly toxic material into that, what is known as the soil or grit. But earlier they were planning to put it into low-lying areas. They even were going to put it into the bhatti mines and all that. And that was advised against. But the thing is that the other choice is that they were trying to find empty quarries to put it into and things like that. Always, all these will lead to water pollution, because even many of the cracks in the quarries can actually lead into aquifers. Now they are saying that it can be used for roads, because in road building, you need a certain amount of, you need a certain amount of soil, you need, various types of various sizes of, stones and all that. And you can also, after Professor Varatharajan has done, and, this has been tested by the Indian Road Congress and also the IRRI, that certain amount of plastic waste can also be used for laminating the sub base in road making. So that is the reason I think that they have said that this can be used, because they probably feel that instead of concentrating it and putting it into one place, and this will help in saving a certain amount of resources like soil and stones and other things. But it will not lead to so much of pollution. Now, I'm not absolutely sure whether I have understood your question perfectly, but I would say that one cannot say that this is not without risk, because even in a road building, one cannot say that there will be no seepage, that there will be no leaching of the any kind of toxic or hazardous material into the surrounding areas. It's very difficult to say, unless, of course, there's a complete lining, or there is some kind of a barrier which prevents it from going into the soil or subsoil near it. But I don't know whether it has been already tested, and that's the reason why they are saying it. I don't know whether I have been able to answer your question or at least create another question.
Professor, you definitely answered the question. I guess it still needs to be delved upon. But yeah, you definitely identified a lot of the different factors. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ma'am, there's a question in the chat box.
Okay.
It's by Anvesha Maharana. They ask, what are the main challenges in implementing segregated waste collection in cities? Lack of awareness, or is it lack of motivation or methodologies?
Okay, so basically, one thing that we noticed when we were working with communities is that, there has to be some amount of support both from the urban local body and also in a localized way, in terms of infrastructure, or even in terms of, the Resident Welfare Association. So in the case of, communities where they are able to motivate, but they are not able to provide the adequate infrastructure, then also it fails. Now, here, as I said, this is a government colony where they have provided all the infrastructure. So motivation and, when people see that, okay, after I segregate, it is going somewhere and something is happening to it and something is getting created and it is being made use of, then people don't seem like, you can see here, it's fairly dry waste, but, but where they see that, okay, I'm segregating, but, it is just getting mixed and nobody is taking any interest in, further segregating it or making use of it, or, using it for livelihoods or for, making products which are useful. Then in that case, I find that it's much more difficult to make people do anything. So also a lot of civil society organizations coming forward and, people giving them, people buying things from them, people encouraging them, and, giving them space, chance, to come and demonstrate, to come and show that, they are willing to reuse, buy back and all that. And also corporate organizations which are willing to, come into the picture and provide the CSR or, or help in creating infrastructure or in using it in their own premises. All these kind of things play a very big role, rather than only just motivation. I don't know whether I've been able to answer your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Welcome.
Do any participants have any further questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if it's okay for the speaker to share the PPT somehow.
Yeah, I have sent the PPT as it is to Dr. Arjun. I think the IMPRI has it now, so they can decide to share.
Okay, since we don't have any more questions and due to shortage of time also, I would like to also invite Vaishali Singh ji, researcher at IMPRI, to showcase the fellow topics.
Sure. Thank you, Priksha. Astava, can we quickly share the screen? Right. We have received few of the abstracts and the titles that have been finalized for the research paper. And we are still awaiting few of the fellows whose paper that we can receive. We are expecting to receive this week as well. And we have received Abhijit, who's going to work on illegal sand mining, waste disposal, and impact on coastal communities. Ankita ji, whose work is going to be on role of ESG in climate change mitigation. Dibangta ji, who's going to be on non-timber forest products and climate change. Astaba, can we zoom it a little? Like fellows have requested. Yeah, that works. Tibanita ji, who's going to work on commons and pastoral livelihoods through practitioners' lens and exploration of key trends and challenges. Megha ji, who's going to work on call for climate justice, lessons from global practices and challenges in India. Neeraj ji's topic is what does my waste bag of chips have to do with climate change? Nishchan ji on ESG dynamics in Ganga Yamuna ecosystem in Prayagraj. Oshanika ji on rehabilitation of Narmada Valley flood victims in Dhar district. Shaboni ji on green energy initiatives steering towards an ecological and policy sustainability for a resilient future. Tanisha ji on fast fashion, a global challenge. Darshan ji on climate change and inequality, how it affects different people in society. These are few of the topics that our fellows have submitted and has gone through Bhargavi ma'am's suggestions and comments as well. And the fellows have duly inculcated and they are going to work forward with this. And we are waiting the rest of the fellows to submit their abstracts so that can be shared with our expert Bhargavi ji, so that you can get your comments and suggestions from her. Sorry. Over to you, Preksha. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Vishali. And firstly, I would like to thank Professor Shyamala Manji for giving a wonderful presentation and for being with us here today. And we really hope to continue learning from her in the future events as well. Now, moving forward, I'd like to invite Bhargavi ma'am for her comments on the session and final remarks for the day as well. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Priyanka, and thanks to Shyamala ma'am for that wonderful presentation, because she walked us through the entire landscape of waste and the different kinds of waste and how everything is so connected with each other. And she also brought out how we no longer are that community who would probably go back to mending our clothes or repairing our stuff and reusing it till the last bit. We tend to throw it out the minute it becomes not usable for some small reason. And I was also reminded of somebody who I met yesterday who said that every time they traveled abroad, they never bought warm wear, but they only borrowed the warm wear, because coming from a tropical country like in southern India where winter is hardly experienced, so she was telling me that how she has never invested on warm clothes. I'm like, oh wow, if everybody could do that, if we can still go back to that era where we can borrow stuff we need only for a short while and then return it, the world would be such a nice place, because there won't be so much production, so much consumption, and so much wastage as well. Given that fashion today is changing like crazy, what is there last year is not there this year, and every time you go to a store you see something different and you'll suddenly feel so old-fashioned with whatever you're wearing or carrying or using. So the fact that we can borrow, reuse, and continue to use some old stuff will also probably change the way the fashion industry looks at us. And many a time when I'm talking to students, I also keep telling them that while we are constantly updating our fashion, it's also very important to ensure that our wardrobe has something that comes from the local economy. Like, how many of us are conscious of the local handlooms and the handmade, whether it's straw bags or jute bags or anything that is handmade, something that you've supported the local economy, while we may still have some of the big brands. So to be conscious of that and see where our waste is going, who's making it, to creating those little economies where people can still survive and live a dignified life. I think that is very important in this whole theme of the circular economy. Something else that Shyamala ji said was about how everybody today is working towards a goal to improve the state of the planet, but then we're all working in silos. That is so important. We don't connect with each other, and the lack of connecting with each other is what is creating these gaps, and it's also not translating into good policies, because only a certain sector will land up talking to the policy makers, only a certain sector will land up knocking on the doors of the decision makers, so they only hear one side of the story. So it's so important that all of us work together and all of us translate the knowledge that we are creating as part of our research, as part of our experiential work. If we can translate that to policy and action, I think that was something she highlighted really well, and it also came across in her talk and the work that she shared about her own PhD students. I think all of that is so important in the current context, and particularly for students to study some of the ongoing challenges, taking it up as Vaishali just shared the list of topics that all of you have chosen for your assignments. I think that speaks of all the current issues, and more of such work, more of such writing is what is required. Like our previous speaker spoke about advocacy, just writing about it, talking about it in all our circles, trying to raise consciousness among everybody. It's okay if you're hitting a wrong nerve, but it's important to engage with people, to make them aware that this is finally good for the planet, to somewhere break those comfort zones, and it's not about the other person, but it's just a particular habit of the other person of using water or using motorized transport unnecessarily, or whatever it is, or in the context of trees that we heard so much today. Many buildings today, commercial complexes and even residential complexes, they cut down trees because it takes away the look of their buildings from the front side of the road. Many trees in Bangalore got chopped, and they managed to get permissions. Like Shyamala just shared, it's so easy to get permission. So I think engaging in these conversations, trying to raise people's awareness, trying to make them realize that all these actions will eventually hit them, I think that came across very nicely in today's session. All the three sessions spoke about it, and thank you so much for highlighting all of this. Thank you, and have a good weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you for being very patient with us. Now, with your permission, I think we can move on to the formal word of thanks. With that, as we come to the end of day 5th of the Environment Policy and Action Youth Fellowship, an online international summer school program, a 2-month online immersive Introductory Leadership Certificate Training Fellowship Program, I, Bhargavi, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI. We are grateful to our experts for the 5th day, Mr. Ranjan Panda ji, Ms. Bhavreen Kandhari ji, Professor Shyamala Mani ji, and Mr. Virheen Khanna ji as well, for taking out their valuable time and allowing us to learn from this online certificate program. We thank our chair, Ms. Bhargavi S. Rao ji, for convening all these sessions very patiently. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and have been active in participation in this deliberation. We look forward to welcoming you next Saturday on 15th June for our D6 of the certification course. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join us in future for our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning events. Wishing you a very good evening, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.